He's the hero of our nation. It hasn't happened by chance. He's earned it by hard work. The words of German legend Günther Netzer in reference to the incomparable Franz Beckenbauer. Defense is an area of the game that is often overlooked due to the fact that it isn't all that flashy in comparison to its more advanced counterparts. This is something that is evidenced by the fact that of the 64 Ballon d'Ors that have been awarded to date, only 3 defenders have won the trophy: Fabio Cannavaro, Matthias Sammer, and Franz Beckenbauer. Sammer and Cannavaro were insane, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, they only won the award once. When Franz Beckenbauer won it for the first time, he woke up the very next day and said, "Yo, let's run that back." Of course, I'm only paraphrasing what he really said. Paraphrasing a quote that I made up, that is. But I don't see how that's relevant at all at the moment. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that he won the Golden Ball twice. Legend. Beckenbauer was and still is a bona fide icon. A man who was not only a fantastic footballer that won countless personal and team awards and a fearless captain who represented both club and country, but he was also a man that revolutionized the libero role at the heart of the defense. So at this point, you may be thinking, this guy must have been pretty good, huh? He was. But the question of the day is, how good? Yo, what is going on everyone? I hope you're all doing well and staying safe. If you wouldn't mind, you see that little button in the bottom right corner? Yeah, that one. Go on. Okay, let's jump right in. Born back in 1945 in Munich, Germany, Franz Beckenbauer was born into a working class family only months after the war came to a close. When describing what it was like to live in post-war Germany, he once said, "The country was bombed out. There seemed to be no real future for anything. But as a kid, I liked to move, be on the field. That was my motivation. And there was only football left after the war. No tennis, no golf, no other sport." Despite this, back then, football was far from the commercial behemoth that it is today. So his father, Franz Beckenbauer Sr., was understandably unconvinced of his boy's chosen pastime. Nonetheless, Franz Beckenbauer Jr. began playing football at the age of just 9 for his local team SC Munich 06. However, his heart belonged to the Blues of 1860 Munich from a young age, and it was his dream to play for them. That all changed on one fateful day. Now, the specifics of that day are a bit blurry according to the history books and a prestigious institute of research that I like to call Google, but as the story went, at about 13 years of age, Beckenbauer found himself in a local tournament with SC Munich and had even reached the final. Unfortunately, at the time, SC Munich did not have the finances to continue running the club's youth program. So Beckenbauer and many of his teammates were all but set to join 1860 Munich's academy following this very tournament. As fate would have it, he actually came up against his quote-unquote future club in the finals of this tournament. He was playing up top as a striker at this point, and after a physical altercation that involved his opposing centre-back high-fiving Beckenbauer's face, he began having second thoughts about joining the club. And so, he didn't, opting to join their city rivals Bayern Munich instead. That was back in 1959. Damn, one slap was really all it took to change the course of football history forever, huh? That's kinda crazy. In any case, fast forward to 1963 and the 5 regional West Germany leagues combined to form the modern Bundesliga. However, Bayern Munich were left out. Turns out, decision makers of the league only permitted one team from Munich to be included in the newly formed league, and 1860 were given the nod as they were the reigning champions of their regional league. However, this was quite a contentious decision. The deciding factor for entry into the new 16-team league was apparently based on the previous 12 years of results for each team in contention. Bayern Munich sat in 6th place overall on that list. 1860 Munich ranked 7th, but were given preference purely due to the fact that they had just won the league. Bayern were not happy. And judging by how they've ravaged the Bundesliga since then, you might even say that they took that personally. In any case, this exclusion actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Bayern weren't in the best financial position at that point and had to get rid of many of their top players, many of whom went off to Bundesliga clubs. They were then forced to back their youth and seek young, top talent in and around Munich to recruit. Luckily for them, they had Franz Beckenbauer and Sepp Maier, a legendary goalkeeper, in their youth ranks already. Gerd Müller, a rather unknown player, I wouldn't be surprised if you don't know about him, he's not that well known, was also added to the ranks shortly after. Back in 1964, they were all still teenagers. However, they would soon collectively form a three-pronged pillar that Bayern would go on to build their empire on: the Axis. Bringing the focus back to Beckenbauer, and according to him, the fact that Bayern were not in the top division was greatly appreciated. Their young team was given the opportunity to build experience and confidence under considerably less pressure. Another season in the regional league definitely did us young players a power of good. He wasn't wrong. And Beckenbauer was quite the talent even back then, still playing as a forward but having the tendency to drop back and play make on occasion, and also playing as a midfielder more and more frequently. Supreme passing ability was something he had in heaps due to practicing his distribution with one of the greatest teammates he's ever had: a wall. When describing how he came to have his passing abilities, he credited the wall of his house for helping him get them. That wall was the most honest teammate you could wish for. If you play a proper pass, you'd get it back properly without the need to run. We can only imagine what would happen if a pass was misplaced. Apart from that, he had an astute handle on how to read the game as well as a cool head, traits that definitely came into play over his career. By the 1965-66 season, Bayern Munich had finally been promoted to the Bundesliga, with Franz Beckenbauer scoring a very impressive 16 goals in 31 appearances in the previous season, helping them to promotion. That's not too bad, you know. In Bayern's first ever match in the Bundesliga, they were matched up against their rivals 1860, a match they lost by 1-0. 1860 actually went on to win the league that year, although that was actually the last top division title that they won. Bayern Munich, on the other hand. I don't need to say it, do I? In any case, in the grand scheme of things, losing their first match in the Bundesliga didn't mean all that much for Bayern. From this year onwards, the young Bavarian team truly came of age. Back-to-back DFB Pokals in this season and the next, a European Cup Winners' Cup, and finally the Bundesliga itself in 1969, all within Bayern's first 4 years in the top flight. However, this was only the beginning for Beckenbauer. In between all of this, the 1966 World Cup was at hand, a tournament in which Beckenbauer played every single match. Note that he was being used as a midfielder at this point. Unfortunately, Germany lost by 4-2 against England in the final, as for the first and last time to date, it came home. Football, that is. But Beckenbauer deserved to hold his head high. After all, he walked away as the best young player of the tournament with 4 goals from the midfield. Fast forward to 1968 and he was officially given the fabled nickname that we all know him by today: Der Kaiser, the Emperor. In the 1969 DFB Pokal final against Schalke 04, Beckenbauer put up a strong performance, and after defending well and winning the whole thing, the media dubbed him as Der Kaiser. This was also after an emphatic performance against a member of the opposition who was known as the King. And what's better than a king? Well, an emperor, of course. Several other stories are often stated as the origin of this name coming about, but this seems to be the earliest that it popped up. In any case, the origin of this name hardly matters. At the end of the day, the fact is that it's quite fitting. A year later, and Beckenbauer was now the Bayern Munich captain following the departure of former captain Werner Olk. In that same year, the 1970 World Cup took place. Germany were strong yet again and even looked to be the favourites as they beat England in a rematch of the previous World Cup final in the quarter-finals. Although, again, Germany fell short, this time in the semi-finals against Italy. However, this was no ordinary game. No, this was the game of the century. Seriously, that's what it's commonly referred to. A grueling game that ended 4-3 in favour of Italy. Only 2 goals were scored in regulation time, with the remaining 5 coming in extra time. Italy played valiantly and ended up victorious, yes. But one of the biggest highlights of this match was that Beckenbauer was fouled and subsequently dislocated his shoulder. However, Germany had made all of their substitutions earlier in the game, so he could not come off. But that hardly mattered, because he did not want to come off. The solution? The madman soldiered on and played the remainder of the match in a makeshift sling. and Germany still managed to put up a valiant fight, falling short by the narrowest of margins. Even all the way back then, Franz Beckenbauer was that guy. Anyone that disputes that, well,
you're not that guy, pal. Trust me, you're not that guy.
And I know I've already said this, but it really is important that we understand it. This was only the beginning for Franz Beckenbauer. Sometime around the late 60s, Beckenbauer started to be deployed in the centre-back position as opposed to the midfield role he had taken up earlier in his Bundesliga career. By the time the 70s came around, this was pretty much his base position. But he wasn't a regular centre-back. No, he was a sweeper, also known as a libero, a variation of the centre-back role that allows those who play the role the freedom to push up as far as the midfield to make interceptions, carry the ball, and essentially play-make. This role had been around before, so it's not like he invented it, but he most certainly revolutionized it. So much so that following the end of his playing career, top teams in the 80s and 90s had all attempted to implement a system that incorporated a libero role in some shape or form. Some even succeeded. However, probably no player has had the impact on the role or experienced as much success in it than Der Kaiser himself. Speaking of success, you may be wondering at this point, now that all sounds well and good, but you keep going on about success and this was only the beginning and blah blah blah. Those are shallow words. What did he win in the 70s, his so-called prime? Well, 3 Bundesliga titles back to back to back between 1972 and 1974, 3 European Cups back to back to back between 1974 and 1976, and a DFB Pokal. And that was just with Bayern Munich. This was coupled with the 1972 UEFA European Championship with Germany, as well as the crown jewel, the World Cup in 1974. A match where Beckenbauer basically man-marks the Ballon d'Or winner of that year out of the game, Johann Cruyff. And speaking of Ballon d'Ors, he picked up 2 himself, one in 1972 and the other in 1976. As a defender, he was the captain for both club and country for each and every triumph I just listed, pouring his heart out whenever he stepped to the pitch, guiding his men to victory. Calling him a hero is an understatement. Following runaway success with the national team and with Bayern Munich, Beckenbauer retired from Die Mannschaft and bid farewell to Bayern Munich in 1977 at the age of 31. This was much to the dismay of Bayern as well as the national team, who felt he could go on for slightly longer. However, the reasoning for this was that he chose to take on a new challenge, a challenge across the pond. Even though the league is getting stronger and stronger by the year, many still view playing in America as a precursor for a player's retirement, a retirement league, so to speak. Seeing as how in recent years, players in the twilight of their careers tend to move over there for large pay packages, it's hard to argue that statement. As a matter of fact, that hasn't changed all that much over the years. Although, back in the day, they didn't move for Major League Soccer, rather the North American Soccer League, or NASL for short. Towards the end of the 70s, the likes of Pelé, Franz Beckenbauer, Johann Cruyff, Gordon Banks, and Carlos Alberto, among others, all moved over to the States towards the back end of their careers. This period actually did wonders for the popularity of football in North America at the time, so it could be considered a success in that regard. In any case, as for Beckenbauer, he moved over to the New York Cosmos and teamed up with Pelé. In his 4-year stay, he enjoyed a very successful stint, winning 3 league titles. He still had it. Having scratched his explorative itch, he decided it was time to make a return to Germany in 1980, this time with Hamburg. And after winning the Bundesliga just one last time and returning to New York Cosmos just one last time, he finally decided to call it quits, retiring from football in 1983 at 38 years of age. Franz Beckenbauer is, rightly so, regarded as one of the most important figures in German and world football history. The most important figure to some, depending on who you ask, and especially depending on whether the person you ask is German or not. His achievements on the pitch really do speak for themselves. The cultural impact of winning, leadership, and guts in German football is something he played a large role in fostering. I think it's safe to say his legacy will remain far beyond my years and yours. Not to mention that I've only spoken about his exploits on the pitch. His achievements off the pitch are arguably just as impressive, maybe even more so. As a manager, he took Germany to the World Cup final in 1986, only just losing out to Diego Maradona's Argentina. Although 4 years later, he got his revenge, beating Argentina in the final of the 1990 World Cup. In doing so, he became one of only 2 men to have won the World Cup as a player and as a manager, with the other being Mario Zagallo with Brazil. Since then, Didier Deschamps has also emulated this feat with France. Beckenbauer then went on to manage Marseille, where he won the French top division, and then Bayern Munich, where he won yet another Bundesliga title as well as the UEFA Cup. He then took up the presidency at Bayern Munich as the club enjoyed even more success under his guidance. He really did do it all. The man completed football. This entire video was just one really long-winded way of saying that the Emperor really was one of a kind. Long live Der Kaiser. And there we have it. Really hope you guys enjoyed this one. What do you think of Franz Beckenbauer's career both on and off the pitch? Show of hands, who was around to actually watch him play? Spoiler alert, I wasn't. But it would have been cool. Anyway, that's all from me today. Truly hope you're all staying safe. Cheers, and I'll catch you in the next one.